There comes a night in every man's life when he finally notices what was always there. The invisible strings, the subtle pulls, the softest touch that moves mountains. Maybe you're sitting across a table, dim light, her laughter sweet as honey, her eyes shining with approval or disappointment, depending on the story she wants you to believe. You feel like the hero, but somehow the script keeps changing, and you're always a step behind. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most men never see the real game. They think love is a contest of gifts, words, or gestures, but some learn, too late, that real power hides in the shadows between words, in the glance, the silence, the gentle nudge of expectation. She never demands. She suggests. She never blames. She simply withdraws. She doesn't threaten. She pouts, sighs, or grows suddenly cold, and you find yourself scrambling to restore the warmth you barely noticed was fading. Why do we so often confuse her disappointment for our own failure? Why do we believe that her happiness is the measure of our worth? You try harder, give more, bend farther, hoping to win back what you never lost, to solve a puzzle whose pieces keep shifting. Is it really love? Or are you just dancing to a tune you didn't choose? The world sells you a fairy tale of equals, but in the real world, power rarely wears a crown. Sometimes, it wears a smile, a wounded gaze, a story that makes you the villain unless you play your part. You start to wonder, who wrote these rules, and when did you agree to them? Tonight, in the quiet after her last word, you begin to see. The most dangerous chains are the ones you can't see. And every man must decide, will he live by someone else's script, or finally learn to write his own? You start to see it not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet edits of your own life, how you've swapped your favorite shirt because she said it looked childish, how you catch yourself canceling plans with friends when she frowns and says, "It's just, I thought we could have a night in together." Sometimes you laugh at her joke when you'd rather disagree, or you apologize for things you never would have noticed if she hadn't paused and stared. At first, it feels like love, like compromise, like caring. You tell yourself, "I just want to make her happy," but there's a knot growing in your chest, tight and silent, every time you trade a piece of yourself for a few moments of peace. Arthur Schopenhauer once warned, compassion for oneself is the foundation for moral courage. You wonder where your courage went. Was it when you stopped speaking your mind? Or the first time you said, "It's okay," just to avoid another night of cold silence? There's a subtle game being played, and you sense the rules are always changing, but the goal is the same. Control is never about who shouts, but about who keeps you guessing. The hardest part? It rarely looks like control at all. It looks like care, concern, vulnerability. You learn to read the cues, a sigh, a distant look, a sudden withdrawal of affection. She never says, "Do this." She lets you guess what will restore the balance. And you do. Over and over. It's a pattern, subtle and persistent. You edit your words, soften your tone, scan every conversation for landmines. The man who once walked tall now tiptoes through his own life. You ask yourself, is this really partnership, or am I playing a role? Why is my peace dependent on her mood? Why do I feel less like myself and more like a character in a story I didn't write? Sometimes, late at night, you remember who you were before, confident, stubborn, maybe even reckless. You had edges then, and now you wonder if you've been sanded smooth, reshaped by a love that sometimes feels more like a test than a sanctuary. There's a seductive illusion that if you just try hard enough, give enough, become perfect, you'll finally earn her unwavering love. But the truth is, no amount of bending will ever fill a cup with a hole in the bottom. The goalpost moves, the rules shift. The only constant is the slow erosion of your own center. Real love doesn't require you to disappear. Real partnership doesn't ask you to trade your boundaries for affection, or your truth for comfort. You start to see the old patterns. The more you apologize, the more you're expected to. The less you speak your mind, the harder it is to find your voice. The more you try to fix her feelings, the more you lose touch with your own. Here's what you learn, slowly, painfully, but finally. Never apologize for being yourself. Never sacrifice your core for someone else's calm. Set boundaries, soft at first, then steel. Protect the parts of you that no one else will defend. The greatest trap is thinking your sacrifice is love. The real cost is invisible at first, a sense of smallness, a fading of color, a quiet resentment that grows like rust. One day you look in the mirror and realize you don't recognize the man staring back. That's when you know. No one will hand you back your life but you. Tonight, sit in the quiet, even if it's uncomfortable. Ask yourself whose life you're living. Dare to imagine what you'd say if you weren't afraid to lose her. Let that truth rise. Because the only love worth keeping is the kind that lets you keep yourself. You begin to notice the small rituals of control, the way her questions sound like concern, but each answer feels like a test. You say, I'm going out with friends tonight. And she smiles, just a little too thin, her silence stretching into the space between you until guilt starts to settle on your shoulders. Maybe she says, have fun, but you hear, if you cared, you'd stay. When you get home, she's distant, scrolling her phone, letting you feel the chill without a word. It's not punishment. It's something softer, more dangerous, a rewiring of your loyalty, turning your own heart into a leash. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But who are you now? Sometimes you don't know if you're growing or disappearing. You start filtering every story you tell, scanning for reactions, smoothing the rough edges of your day so nothing offends, nothing triggers a sigh or a cold shoulder. At first, you think you're just being kind, just keeping the peace. But deep down, you sense what you're really losing. Why is it so easy to lose yourself in love? Why do we let someone else's comfort outweigh our own convictions? Why do we feel heroic for self-sacrifice when it only makes us smaller? The hardest part is admitting the truth. Nobody is forcing you to bend. She doesn't need to raise her voice or make demands. The real trap is that you do it willingly. Your subscription and comment aren't just numbers. They're signals that decide what video comes next. Share your thoughts or ideas in the comments. They often become the foundation for news stories. Interestingly, over 90% of viewers watch my videos without subscribing. That's okay. It means the content pulls you in. But subscribing helps you stay updated with the next parts. Hit subscribe, and let's create the next video together. Hoping it will earn you security, or gratitude, or a return to the sweetness you remember from the beginning. You start to see the contrast. Real love asks you to grow, not shrink. It makes space for both of you to breathe, to disagree, to hold your shape even when the winds of mood or memory are strong. But manipulation? It thrives in your silence, grows each time you bite your tongue, roots itself deeper every time you trade your needs for a quiet night. So you write yourself new commandments. I will not apologize for honest feelings. I will not beg for approval. I will risk her anger to protect my own dignity. I will choose discomfort over resentment. Your patterns begin to shift. You say no and live with the tension. You share a thought, even if it lands badly. You make plans without explaining every detail. And at first, it feels like standing on a ledge, the air thin and cold. You worry she'll leave, that you'll be alone. But then something new starts to grow, a quiet strength, a sense of your own gravity. The more you show up as yourself, the more you realize love can't survive in the absence of truth. Most men never get here. They keep playing along, hoping to fix, to please, to finally be enough. They wake up years later, wondering when they disappeared. So tonight, if you're tired of shrinking, if you want your life back, let this be your reminder. The most dangerous chains are the ones you lock around yourself. Unlock them. Speak. Stand your ground. Because the right woman wants your wholeness, not your surrender. And so, one step at a time, you start coming home to yourself. Change doesn't happen all at once. The first time you speak your mind, the words come out shaky, as if you're breaking some ancient rule. She frowns, maybe, or goes silent for hours. The air is thick with uncertainty. You feel the old urge to apologize, to fix, to chase her approval, but this time, you let the silence stand. You sit with your own discomfort, resisting the need to rush in and rescue the moment. For the first time in a long time, you let yourself be misunderstood. You remember something you read from Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So you start making small changes, not to her, but to you. You return to forgotten habits, music you loved, friends you haven't called in months, projects that once gave you purpose. At first, she resists the change. Maybe she gets colder, maybe she grows louder, searching for the version of you she could predict and control. But you keep going. Each honest word, each quiet no, is a brick in the foundation of your self-respect. Why is it so terrifying to reclaim your boundaries? Why does choosing yourself feel like betrayal, when all you're doing is asking for room to breathe? Maybe it's because for so long, you were praised for your sacrifice. The truth is, the more you step into your own life, the clearer everything becomes. The manipulation loses its power. It can only work in the dark, in the silence, in the confusion of guilt and guessing. When you bring your truth into the open, when you hold your ground, you shine a light into every corner where fear once hid. Sometimes, the relationship survives. Sometimes, it doesn't. But what always survives is you. So your rules change. I will make decisions for myself, not for peace alone. I will keep friendships and passions that make me whole. I will listen to my own doubts and honor them. I will not accept love that cost me my voice. You start to notice which friends cheer your return to yourself and which ones fade away. You see how much energy you wasted on pleasing, how much of your life was built around moods that were never yours to control. And as you reclaim your days, the world seems brighter, wider, full of possibility again. Most men never risk this much discomfort. They choose the pain they know over the uncertainty of change. But you tonight are standing on new ground. The chains are falling. Your life, for the first time in a long time, feels like it belongs to you. With every day that passes, you start to feel the subtle return of your own gravity. It's not about being louder or winning arguments or proving your worth to anyone else. It's about the quiet, steady certainty that your needs, your feelings, your boundaries matter just as much as anyone's. At first, it's strange walking through your life without automatically editing yourself, without running every decision through someone else's filter. There's a kind of freedom in it, but also a quiet fear. What if you're too much? What if you lose her for good? You remember a line from Rollo May: "The opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity." For years, you called your silence love. Now you know it was something else. True love asks you to show up as you are, not as someone molded for comfort. The risk is real. Some days, she pushes back harder, testing the limits of your new self-respect. Some days, you feel the old guilt, the urge to fold and become smaller just to keep things easy. But you hold your ground, and each time you do, the fear recedes a little more. You start to see the patterns in your days. You speak up in small ways, about a movie you don't want to watch, a friend you'd like to see, an opinion you held back for too long. Sometimes it leads to tension, sometimes to real conversation, and sometimes to silence that no longer frightens you. You learn to live with this uncertainty. It's the price of freedom, of truth, of a love that doesn't cost your soul. You begin to rebuild your life from the inside out. You reconnect with old friends, revive abandoned hobbies, rediscover the man you used to be and the man you want to become. Some people drift away, but new ones appear, drawn to your honesty, your edges, your refusal to perform. You realize you are not alone. There are men everywhere waking up to the same truth. Life is too short to live small. There's still grief, still fear, still moments when you wish things could be simple. But now you know, simplicity built on self-betrayal isn't peace, it's a slow erosion of everything that makes you whole. Real love might not always be easy, but it is never built on silence, sacrifice, or manipulation. So, tonight, you choose again. You choose your voice. You choose your dignity. You choose the sometimes messy, always honest act of being yourself, no matter who stays, no matter who goes. And in that choice, you finally come home. Time passes, and the changes settle deeper. The relationship finds a new shape, or perhaps it fades, leaving a gentle ache and a lesson you'll never forget. You realize now that the most important battle was never between you and her, but between the man you used to be and the man you're becoming. Each day, you grow stronger, more grounded in your own truth. You carry yourself differently, shoulders less tense, eyes clearer, laughter freer. You stop asking, "What does she want?" and start asking, "What do I want?" You notice how much energy you have when you're not constantly managing someone else's emotions. The world feels bigger. You spend more time outside, more time in conversation with men who know what it means to risk honesty, more time building a life that isn't built around someone else's mood. Frankel's words echo in your mind. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. You realize how many men are still trapped, still hoping their silence will earn them love, still measuring their worth by the rise and fall of someone else's approval. You want to reach back and tell them, your voice matters. Your life belongs to you. You see it all with new eyes now. The little moments of manipulation stand out, the way a conversation shifts when you hold your ground, the way respect rises when you refuse to be bent. The people who matter respond to your truth, not your performance. The ones who fade were never there for the real you anyway. There are still days of doubt, but you weather them with a new steadiness. You keep old promises to yourself, time with friends, work you care about, nights you spend just for you. You notice how much you were willing to sacrifice before, and now you count each boundary as a victory, not a threat. And as you move forward, you become the man you wished you'd been all along, not hard, not cold, but honest, open, and unafraid of conflict in the name of truth. The world needs more of this, not men who conform, but men who refuse to be erased. Tonight, you go to sleep lighter. The chains are gone. The world is wide again. With every sunrise, you feel more at home in your own life. The world hasn't changed, but you have a quiet strength now fills the space that once belonged to guilt and confusion. Where you used to scan her moods for clues about your worth, you now look inward, trusting your own feelings to guide your choices. The power she once held over your peace is gone, replaced by a steady confidence that grows with each boundary you hold and each honest word you speak. You see your old self with compassion, not regret. You understand why you stayed silent, why you bent, why you hope to earn the love you already deserved. But you also see the difference now. You don't apologize for your existence, don't shrink for comfort, don't play small to avoid storms. You've survived the hardest test, not the loss of love, but the rediscovery of self-respect. You reconnect with what matters: friendship, adventure, work that excites you, moments of stillness that feed your soul. The need for approval fades, the craving for honesty takes its place. You realize the kind of woman who's drawn to your new presence will want you as you are, not as you're willing to become for her sake. And for the first time, you forgive her too. You see that her own fears, her own need for control, her own patterns of hurt were never really about you. You let go, not to punish her, but to set yourself free. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's letting yourself step into the future unburdened by old battles. Most of all, you promise never to disappear again, not for comfort, not for love, not for peace. The man you're becoming needs no one's permission but his own. There's a new adventure ahead, one that belongs only to you. So you close your eyes tonight, knowing the truth at last. You are whole. You are worthy. And you will never trade your freedom for anyone's approval again. The story ends not with victory over another, but with the quiet triumph of coming home to yourself.